A dull day. The sun may be shining when you read this, but it was a dull day when it was written. The sky is an ugly, drab smudge. There is no sun, no rain, no wind, nothing. Across the street is a house. It is a stupid house, full of stupid people. I know them. I wish I didn't. There are many people you are sorry to have met. It's too close to have a fire, and too cold to do without one. Is anything hollower and drearier than a fireless fireplace? A bird is on a tree outdoors. He is not singing. His head is all drawn down into his shoulders. He is just sitting there, hating himself. A number of people have passed by the window. They are the dullest, homeliest bunch of human creatures I ever saw. I hate them all. A crash. The hired girl has just smashed one of our best plates, an extra fine Sunday plate with gold on it. The only reason I don't go out and give her a dressing down is because I hate to move. Why move? Such a day as this, you are no happier anywhere than where you are. If you must be miserable, why spread it around? Old Mrs. Grumpet has just called. She has told the missus for the nth time about her troubles. She has all the diseases she ever heard of. As soon as she hears of a new one, she goes and has it. She has more symptoms than a patent medicine almanac. And it's all along of that blue mess she took just before Austy was born. She's a dreadful, vast, steamy creature. She has left an aroma of added wretchedness in the house. We opened the window to admit some fresh air, and the flies came in. I loathe flies. I chased them with a fly swatter and broke an expensive vase. All vases must some day be shattered, as all men must die. All women must die too, and all children, also all dogs, cats, horses, cows, and grizzly bears. 100 years from now, everybody and everything will be dead. There will be a new crop. After a while, they, too, will die. What's the use? The gas stove is out of fix this morning. So am I. So is the universe. There is no news in the paper. Newspapers are all poor. Why read? Aren't you miserable enough as you are? I am trying to have a vacation and enjoy myself. This morning I played a game of tennis and was beaten by a poor boob that played worse than I. Then I played 2 games of solitaire. Lost both. I went to the cupboard to see. Nothing there but grape juice. The weather is thickening. It is going to rain. It is hours and hours till bedtime. The Little God of Happy Endings. Some woman who knows how to tell a story sends me the following. This is a fairy story, but it is not about a princess. Princesses are always wonderfully beautiful and wise and good, and the little girl in this story was a rather silly little girl. She lived in a little house on a great highway, and watched and waited for the coming of the prince for whom all girls, big and small, great princesses and poor silly little spinners, watch and wait. Many people passed the little house by the roadside as they travelled along the great highway. Once or twice the girl who watched thought she saw the prince in the distance, but always as he approached the likeness faded. Then came one traveller who tarried for a while at the little house. He came quietly, unostentatiously, and the prince was to come riding on a white charger, clothed in the splendour of purple and gold. So she hid herself under a cloak until the traveller again set out on the great highway alone. But after he had gone, she saw that he had left a shadow behind him, and for some contrary woman reason, she hid it, and guarded it carefully, in case he should return and claim it. The days became weeks, the weeks months, the months years, and the prince did not appear. Gradually she gave up the hope of him ever appearing, and no longer watched for him, but occupied her days instead with wholesome labour. And now she was no longer a silly little girl, but a lonely woman. One evening she stood in the doorway, watching the sunset. The highway was quite deserted, save for one lone traveller off in the distance who seemed vaguely familiar. As he approached, she recognized in him the one who had tarried at her dwelling almost 5 years before. She went back into the house to get the shadow from its secret hiding place to return it to him. But when she had opened the door of the little room where she kept it, she suddenly realized that she did not want to give it up. She had kept it for so long, and had grown so used to considering it hers, that she never realized how precious it had become until she had to part with it. She went to the door once more and looked out upon the highway. He was quite near now, and as she stared at him she saw with wonder what she had been blind to before. He was her prince. She wanted to run out to meet him, with a great joy in her heart and a glad cry on her lips, but she was bound by convention. And she was filled with a great fear, lest he should pass by, merely thinking of her as a silly little girl who had hidden herself when he came the first time and let him go on alone. And she decided that, as she was not allowed to reveal herself to him, neither would she attempt to stop him and return the shadow which was rightly his, but would at least keep that, to help make the coming years less lonely. And that is the end of this fairy story. And after all, I am not sure that it is a real fairy story, because most fairy stories end, and they lived happily ever after. Perhaps you, who are so much wiser than the silly little woman, can think of a better ending for it. I thank you, dear unknown sender of this tale, for your pretty compliment. If in any way I might claim to be wiser than you, or than anyone who feels destiny has cheated them, it is because I have ceased to seek the shrine of the little cheating god of happy endings, and visit rather the great god of day by day. The art of happy memory. The most significant step a mind takes is that wherein it realizes that it can control its own operation, when it learns that it can command those things in itself commonly considered automatic. And in nothing does this appear with such striking results to happiness as in the discovery of one's power to manage his memory. Most people think they remember what they remember, and that is all there is to it. But it is possible to make memory a servant and restrain its mastery. In Italy, a rare motto was found by Hazlitt upon a sundial: Horas non numero nisi serenas. I mark only the shining hours. The man whose increase of contentment is most assured as he grows older is the one who has discovered how to enjoy his past. To many of us, the past is always sad. We turn from it with impatience. Man never is, but always to be, blessed. Naturally, this habit of mind sees in the ever-shortening future nothing but tragedy. Accept then these hints on how to handle your past. First, whatever it is has been. It has brought you here. Your condition may not be all your impudent claims on the universe demand, but it might be worse. Better men than you are in jail, are stricken with unceasing pain. Better men than you have been hanged. Out of the worst experiences you have had, you may reap satisfaction. The dangers, sicknesses, accidents, and losses, one who understands the art of living finds in the recalling of even these a certain thankfulness. Is there not pleasure in recounting your narrow escape? You have had your pangs and pains, but the wise man knows that out of these have come his richest crops of understanding. Life has its stripes, but they are its healing. The past is largely made by the present. If you are now soured and disappointed, you are quite hopeless, for your diseased memory will go over your past and pick out from it only miserable things. But if you have adjusted yourself, if with a courageous heart you are trying to make the best of conditions as they are, your memory will aid you, and bring you stores of happy incidents. Your past is the strongest asset of your present judgment. It is your best teacher. Only from it do you learn whatever shrewdness you have in dealing with events. Learn to forgive yourself, not in folly, but in a sane charity. The things you did wrong, the failures and mistakes, consider them as part of that tutelage of destiny that goes toward your present equipment. What has happened to you has happened to all men. The question is, will you cull from it flowers or thorns? Everything considered, says Renan, there are a few situations in the vast field of existence where the balance of debt and credit does not leave a little surplus of happiness. We have crossed the years. We are here. We have escaped what perils. We have landed with what residue of wisdom and of hope. Subconscious fears. A young man writes me that he is afraid of thunderstorms, and asks if there is no way for him to overcome this weakness. I am normal in every other respect, he adds, but notwithstanding my endeavours to fight off this nervousness, I find it to be of no avail. It appears to be a sort of subconscious fear. This is not a matter of ridicule, but a sample of very real and acute suffering to which many persons are subject by fear panics due to various causes. Many women scream with terror at the sight of a mouse. There is no use telling them that mice will not hurt them. So doing, you are addressing their reason, while the trouble lies not in their intelligence. It is a nervous disease. They scare just as a horse shies at a newspaper flapping in the wind. Caesar Augustus was almost convulsed at the sound of thunder. Tycho Brahe changed colour and his legs shook under him on meeting a rabbit. Dr. Samuel Johnson would never enter a room left foot first. Talleyrand trembled at the mention of the word death. Marshal Saxe was mortally afraid of a cat. Peter the Great could never be persuaded to cross a bridge, and, though he tried to master his terror, was unable to do so. I myself have never been able to rid myself of a fear of horses, and the tamest old nag gives me the creeps. And I know a senior in Wellesley College, a young lady of strong intelligence who could be sent almost into convulsions by showing her a spider or a caterpillar. To determine the cause of these fear obsessions is a business for the psychologist. They seem to have nothing to do with the mind or the will, but to be, as my correspondent suggests, rooted somewhere in the subconsciousness. That these weaknesses can be entirely eradicated in a grown person is doubtful. It is about as difficult to uproot an ingrained fear as to get rid of a distaste for mutton. Certain strong natures can perhaps cure themselves, but the average man has to accommodate himself to his weakness and resist it the best he can. But the cruel part of this whole matter is that almost all of these fears are taught us when we are children. Many a child's mind is deliberately poisoned by fear suggestions that are to plague him his life long. Whoever threatens a child, or frightens a child by the fear of thunder or lightning, or the dark or ghosts, or the bad man or death or hell or a vindictive deity should be flogged. Many a delicate child has been more horribly tormented by suggested fears than he could ever have been hurt by corporal punishment. The most deeply moral lesson any mother can instill into her child is that he be unafraid of anything in life or death, and whoso teaches a child a fear has made an incurable wound in his soul.